This is where Canadian police seized an astonishing amount of fentanyl. I'm on the Trans-Canada Highway in Saskatchewan near Swift Current, where about 18 pounds of fentanyl, enough to kill millions of people, was found hidden inside a spare tire. But what happened next raises serious questions about whether Canada's justice system is undermining American efforts to curb fentanyl trafficking. Earlier this year, RCMP charged 2 Calgarian residents, Kunwardeep Singh and Swati Narula, with trafficking a controlled substance and possession for the purpose of trafficking. The pair were arrested after a traffic stop near Swift Current, Saskatchewan, less than 100 miles from the US border, yielded 18 pounds of fentanyl hidden inside a spare tire. The accused told investigators they were headed to Regina, but given the volume, it likely wasn't the final destination. Some of that supply was almost certainly destined for the United States, where the street value and demand for Canadian routed fentanyl remains far higher. As little as 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be fatal. The 17.5 pounds seized near Swift Current contained enough pure fentanyl to kill between 2 and 4 million people. Both were remanded into custody, but that didn't last long. Singh was granted bail on February 20. Just 3 weeks after the arrest, on a $25,000 bond. Narula was released 2 weeks later on March 4th after posting a $10,000 cash bond. Their swift release raises an obvious question. How can individuals caught with lethal quantity of fentanyl worth millions of dollars walk free within 3 weeks, while US is placing tariff after tariff on Canada to stop the flow of fentanyl to the US?
The fentanyl coming through Canada is massive.
We traveled to Swift Current, where the bust happened, to gather all the information we could from the courthouse. Because what we discovered about the acting prosecutor in this case was deeply troubling. Alan Stinson, the Crown's agent prosecuting this case where the 2 accused secured bail, was previously suspended and found guilty of 2 charges by the Law Society of Saskatchewan for providing false undertakings to a bank and for misleading the Canada Revenue Agency, conduct the Law Society called at least reckless and harmful to public confidence. Why would Canada assign a tainted lawyer to prosecute a fentanyl case of this scale? According to the ruling of the Law Society from 2008, Stinson was found guilty of providing a written undertaking to a bank that he was not in a position to fulfill, and of misleading the Canada Revenue Agency by providing to them a written undertaking that he was not in a position to fulfill, and in so doing, induced them to discontinue enforcement proceedings against his client. The Law Society called his conduct at least reckless and harmful to public confidence.
I think that the prosecutor assigned to this case should absolutely not even be involved in the criminal justice world in this failing nation called Canada.
Meet Bob Ray, an independent researcher who left the Sikh religion, which he describes it as a violent cult, explaining from his point of view how the cult has infiltrated into Canadian bureaucracy, which he says had boldened the Singh organized crime.
From British Columbia to Alberta to Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario, some of the largest importation of synthetic opioids are not coming from China, they are coming from India, and the Singhs in Canada are exploiting this importation and the lax law and order situation, and they are manufacturing fentanyl and shipping it across the border to destroy Americans. And I think the Americans are now cognizant of this serious issue, and they want to eradicate the gangster Sikhs from Canadian politics, because this fentanyl crisis is destroying not only Canadian lives, but hundreds of thousands of American lives every year.
Mr. Ray has no confidence in the Public Prosecution Service of Canada, the agency that hired a lawyer to act as a prosecutor who, in his view, falls short of the high ethical standards required for the role. Alan Stinson was also placed under supervision by the Law Society of Saskatchewan for approximately 12 years, following the charges he was found guilty of. That supervision ended in 2020.
So a lawyer that was found guilty to being dishonest should have no part and parcel of being a prosecutor in a high-level fentanyl case. You can't have people with borderline criminal mindsets, in my opinion, functioning as prosecutors because their dishonesty could cause injustice to take place.
Recently, Kunwardeep Singh succeeded in having his bail conditions relaxed. Singh, a truck driver, is now permitted to work within a 125-mile radius of Calgary. But why do we keep seeing Singh after Singh charged with large-scale drug trafficking and Singh after Singh involved in fatal trucking accidents? According to Mr. Ray, the Sikh community in North America has been hijacked by a powerful organization called the World Sikh Organization.
The Singh and Sikh downfall in Canada started in approximately 1984 and 1985 when the World Sikh Organization hijacked this once peaceful religion and turned it into an extremist and radical pathogen.
Mr. Ray alleges that under the leadership of Canadian Sikh politicians with family ties to the WSO, a pipeline has emerged involving human trafficking of young men from Punjab under the guise of international student programs. Once in Canada, many are exploited by members of their own community through schemes such as the illegal sale of permanent residency by employers. Ray argues this exploitation leaves many of these men, whether by coercion or desperation, with no other option but to become mules for the politically connected Singh organized crime networks, operating under the protection of influential figures inside the Canadian government and bureaucracy.
I think Punjabi Sikh drug traffickers in Canada are shielded by any and every politician that aligns under the World Sikh Organization. The World Sikh Organization has the founding president even pandered his religion to have his unqualified, meritless daughter, Kalbinder Kaur Shirgill, elevated from a third-rate gutter lawyer directly into a Supreme Court judge in BC. And I think once that happened in 2017, it completely diminished the integrity of the Canadian Supreme Court.
Ray argues that assigning a tainted lawyer to prosecute a case involving a member of the Singh network warrants further scrutiny, especially given U.S. efforts to crack down on ethno-religious organized crime, such as the Singh organization. He warns Americans that the Canadian Prosecution Service has been infiltrated by Singh organized crime, citing that Kiran Binder, a longtime lawyer with Canada's Department of Justice, which oversees the Public Prosecution Service of Canada, is a former executive of the World Sikh Organization. She is the wife of Conservative Deputy Leader Tim Uppal and shared a residential address with her brother-in-law Raimanpreet Singh Uppal. Raimanpreet was charged by Edmonton police in two separate incidents involving drugs and firearms. But in both cases, prosecutors from Public Prosecution Service of Canada withdrew the charges while his white co-accused were sentenced to jail. But the problem doesn't end with the federal government's handling of fentanyl cases. Provincial governments also play a major role, since it's their politicians who appoint judges to the provincial courts, the same courts where cases like the 18 pounds fentanyl bust in Swift Current are first heard and where bail decisions are made. The judge who granted bail to the two accused, the Honorable Alan Jacobson, was appointed to the Swift Current courthouse by the provincial cabinet under Premier Scott Moe's government in 2024. Premier Moe himself has a troubling history. He killed a mother in a drunk driving collision years before entering politics.
So he never got a taste of justice, and he has no respect for law.
According to Mr. Ray, when a premier with that record holds influence over who becomes a judge, it makes Canada look less like a country of laws and more like a criminal enterprise. If you appreciate the underground investigative journalism I'm doing, please consider making a donation at mediabizergan.com/donate. Thank you.